It took exactly 3 seconds, the time it takes for a hotel promo video to start, for my entire marriage to explode right in the middle of family brunch. On the screen, my husband was at the Sterling Harbor Suites, arm around his mother, signing in for the anniversary romance package. 3 seconds earlier, they were asking me about grandkids. Now, they were staring at the truth. I am Gemma Powell. I'm a night shift nurse at the Blue Ridge Mercy Center, which is one of those places with a name designed to sound kind and compassionate. Mostly, it's where I learned how to triage chaos, how to stay perfectly calm while everything around me was bleeding out. I learned to move with purpose when the alarms went off, to keep my voice steady, to handle the worst parts of humanity with sterile gloves and a clipboard. I always thought that skill set was for my patients, for the gunshot wounds and the multi-car pileups that rolled in at 3 a.m. It turns out that entire education was for this, for my own life. I am standing at the head of my own dining table, in my own sunny, suburban American home. In my right hand, I'm holding the television remote. Behind me, our 70-inch flat screen, the one Connor insisted we buy for football season, is paused on the polished marble lobby of the Sterling Harbor Suites. The table is packed. This is Connor's family, assembled for our traditional Sunday brunch. His Aunt Ruth is here, the one who inspects my baseboards for dust and once asked if my nursing salary covered my hobbies. His cousin Joel is here, a man who quotes scripture in one breath and complains about his capital gains tax in the next. And there, sitting in the seat of honor, beaming like a benevolent queen, is Renee Hale, my mother-in-law, the supposed guest of honor for this little gathering. The air smells like the cinnamon rolls I baked at 5 a.m., the expensive coffee Connor likes, and the suffocating perfume Renee wears, a heavy gardenia scent that always makes me think of funerals. Just 3 minutes ago, the conversation was painfully, predictably normal. "Gemma, honey, you're not getting any younger," Aunt Ruth had said, tapping her fork against her plate for emphasis. "Connor needs an heir. A family needs children to be a real family. It's God's plan," Joel had added, slathering butter on a roll, the greatest gift a wife can give. And Renee, my frail, sweet mother-in-law, had just sighed softly and placed a delicate hand on Connor's arm. "We just want you both to be happy," she'd murmured, though her eyes, when they flicked to me, were sharp. And for Gemma to finally feel fulfilled. I look at them all now, all these faces, so certain of their world, so comfortable in their judgments, so ready to diagnose my lack of fulfillment. I look at my husband, Connor, who is smiling, basking in the glow of his loving family, the perfect picture of the devoted son and husband. In about 3 seconds, everyone at this table is going to know exactly where my husband slept last Thursday night, and I'll tell you right now, it was not in our bed. It was not with me. My thumb, steady as it is when I'm finding a vein, presses the play button. The video isn't high definition. It's grainy footage from a security camera mounted high in the corner of the hotel lobby. Footage I paid a very tired, very underpaid night manager $50 for. But it is unmistakably clear. There is Connor Hale, my husband, standing at the gleaming front desk. His arm is draped around Renee's waist. This is not the respectful, supportive arm of a son helping his aging mother. This is a proprietary hold, his hand resting low on her hip. She is leaning into him, her head tilted up, laughing at something he whispered. She looks 20 years younger than the frail woman at my table. Then the audio kicks in, captured by the desk's microphone. We all hear the chipper, professional voice of the hotel employee. "Absolutely. Mr. and Mrs. Hale, we have you all set for 2 nights. The anniversary romance package. Your suite is on the 19th floor, room 1908. The champagne is already chilling. Happy anniversary, you two." We watch Connor lean in. He doesn't kiss her cheek. He kisses her on the temple, a slow, familiar gesture. "Thank you," he says, his voice that smooth, rich baritone I once found comforting. "We appreciate it." The silence that follows in my dining room is absolute. It is a vacuum. It is heavier and more profound than any noise I have ever heard. Aunt Ruth's fork, piled high with my homemade egg casserole, clatters onto her antique china plate. The sound is like a gunshot. Joel makes a small, strangled sound, like a deflating tire. His face turns a blotchy, furious red. He looks like he's processing heresy. One of the distant cousins, a woman I've met maybe twice, is actually rubbing her eyes with her knuckles, as if she can physically wipe the image from her retinas. Renee. Her face goes perfectly white. The benevolent mask cracks, melts, and slides away. The soft, grateful eyes are gone, replaced by something cold, hard, and reptilian. And Connor, he just stares. His mouth opens and closes, but no sound comes out. He looks like a fish pulled from the water, suffocating on air. I let the video loop once more. We watch them sign the register. We watch them walk to the elevator, his arms still around her. This, I say, and I'm proud of how steady my voice is. It's the nurse's voice, the one I use in a code blue, the one that cuts through panic. This is the Sterling Harbor Suites. This was filmed at 8:10 p.m. on Thursday night. I turn, slowly, and look right at Connor. His eyes are wide with panic. The same Thursday night, I continue, that you called me from the restaurant, the same night you asked me no, begged me to please drive your mother home safely. You said she was feeling faint. You said you had a critical emergency at the office, something you couldn't possibly get out of. You said you'd just grab an Uber home later. Connor shoots up from his chair. The legs scrape, a horrible, tearing sound against the hardwood floor. Gemma, what is this? What in God's name have you done? He's not looking at me. He's looking at his family, his audience. He's already trying to manage the narrative. This is a misunderstanding, he sputters, waving his hands. It's a system error. It's a deep fake. She was feeling dizzy. I got her a room to rest. They must have booked it wrong, Gemma. You know her health. How could you twist this? A system error, I ask. I let a small, cold smile touch my lips. An interesting theory. Connor. Did the system error your arm around her waist? Did the system error the anniversary romance package for Mr. and Mrs. Hale? Did the system error your signature on the check-in form, right under the anniversary special? He's still talking. He's blaming the hotel. He's blaming me. He's shouting about privacy, about insanity, about how I've been stressed and not myself lately. I know you're probably confused. You're wondering how we got here, how a civilized Sunday brunch in a picture-perfect suburb turned into the pilot episode of my new, terrible reality show. Hold on. Let me rewind this whole mess. Let me take you back just a few days, back to that steakhouse, before this brunch became a public execution. It didn't start with this explosion. It never does. It started quietly. It started with a simple, loving request from a husband who trusted his wife. It all started with him looking at me, his eyes so sincere, so full of fake concern, and saying, "Gem, can you take Mom home first? I just have to pop by the office for a bit. I'll grab an Uber home later." I click the remote. The 70-inch screen goes black. The room is silent except for Aunt Ruth's heavy, asthmatic breathing. Connor is pale, visibly vibrating with a mixture of rage and pure, animal panic. Renee is just staring at me. Her mask is gone for good. She isn't looking at me with shock. She's looking at me with pure, unadulterated hatred. I walk calmly over to the drink cart, past the cooling cinnamon rolls and the untouched fruit salad. I picked up my mimosa. The bubbles have mostly gone flat, but it doesn't matter. I raise the glass. A toast to the stunned, horrified crowd at my table. I raise it to Connor, who is trapped between his chair and the lie. I raised it to Renee, the mother he took on an anniversary trip. "Don't worry," I say, and I take a long, slow sip. "This is just an appetizer. The main course is going to be much, much harder to swallow." It was Thursday, 3 days before the brunch. We were having our required family night out at a place called the Baron's Cut, which is exactly the kind of restaurant that sounds expensive but is really just a glorified chain in a downtown office building. It had dark wood, menus the size of car doors, and waiters who called everyone sir and ma'am with just a little too much enthusiasm. Renee, of course, had hated the table I'd reserved. "It's too close to the kitchen. Gemma, can't you hear the noise?" she'd complained. "Loud enough for the waiter to hear. And this lighting is simply dreadful. It makes everyone look ill." Connor just squeezed her shoulder. "It's fine. Mom, we're here to relax." "Relaxing is difficult," she'd said, scanning the menu with disdain. "When the menu is trying so hard." I just sipped my water. This was the ritual. Renee found fault. Connor soothed her, and I played the role of the silent, accommodating daughter-in-law. She criticized my appetizer choice too adventurous, my entree choice too safe, and as always, managed to slide in a dig about my career. "It must be so rewarding," she'd said, cutting into her filet mignon. "To do that kind of work, all those fluids, I'm just glad Connor has a real career. Something that can provide for a real family." I didn't take the bait. I just smiled. The tight, professional smile I reserved for belligerent patients, and said, "It pays the bills." "Renee," Connor had jumped in, steering the conversation toward finances, which was his safe zone. He was a wealth manager, or at least that's what he told me. He managed people's money. He talked a lot about portfolios and diversification. He sounded smart. He sounded competent. He'd insisted on paying the bill, which came to just over $200. I watched him pull out a thick stack of cash from his wallet and count out the bills. This was unusual. Connor lived on his Platinum Amex. He logged every expense for points. "Cash?" I'd asked, trying to sound casual. "Oh," he'd said, not looking at me. "Just easier tonight. Besides, I needed the company card free to pay for that consultant's hotel stay. The guy from the corporation is flying in. Total pain." The sentence didn't connect. It was like a lyric from a different song played in the middle of a verse. Hotel stay. He paid the restaurant in cash to keep the card free. Why not just use a different card? But I said nothing. It was just a weird little blip. We stood outside in the damp, cool air of the valet stand. The city lights felt too bright. Connor had his arm around Renee, ostensibly to keep her warm. "That dinner was lovely, Gemma," Renee said, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. "But I'm suddenly feeling quite faint. The lights, I think—" Connor immediately went into full-on concerned son mode. He turned to me, dangling the car keys from his finger. He had that look on his face, the one that was halfway between pity and condescension, the one he used when he was explaining something complicated to me. "Gem," he said, shaking the keys lightly. "Babe, do you mind taking Mom home first? She's clearly not feeling well. I just got a text that it's a total emergency. I have to swing by the hospital. It's about that new surgeon's portfolio. He's on call and needs me to handle something time-sensitive before his shift. It's a mess. I'll just grab an Uber home later. You get Mom to bed safely." "Okay." It sounded plausible, vague, but plausible. He knew I understood hospital emergencies. "Of course," I said, taking the keys. Then came the second blip. Renee turned to him. She put both her hands on his chest and looked up at him. "Oh, Connor, you work so hard for us." He smiled. "Only the best for you, Mom." He hugged her. It wasn't a quick, A-frame pat-on-the-back hug. It was a full-body, lingering embrace. She buried her face in his neck, and he held her tight. I saw her hand drift from his shoulder down his back. She whispered something right against his ear, something I couldn't hear. The valet pulled my car up, breaking the spell. I got into the driver's seat. The hug just felt long. It felt intimate. It felt wrong. I told myself to stop. I was a nurse. I was overtired. I was paranoid from dealing with too many people in crisis. This was his mother, his loving, widowed mother. Renee was quiet as I pulled into traffic. The gardenia funeral scent filled the car. She wasn't acting faint. She was scrolling through her phone, the screen bright in the dark car. "Thank you for the ride, dear," she said, without looking up. I know it's a bother. It's not a bother. Renee, I said, my voice tight. We stopped at a long red light, about halfway to her condo. Her phone, resting on her lap, lit up with a notification. A banner alert dropped down from the top of her screen. I didn't mean to look. It was just there, illuminated, impossible to miss. Sterling Harbor Suites. Your romance. Package is confirmed for tonight. Mr. Hale, check-in 8:00 p.m. My heart didn't just pound. It stopped. It physically seized in my chest. A sudden, painful arrhythmia. Mr. Hale. Romance package. Tonight, 8 p.m. Renee snatched the phone so fast she almost fumbled it. Her hand darted out like a snake. She jammed the phone's screen down into her purse. Ugh, she said, with a forced, brittle laugh. These spam messages are just dreadful, aren't they? So inappropriate. They try to trick you into clicking anything these days. She immediately changed the subject. Did you see the curtains Aunt Ruth was wearing, I mean? Honestly, her dress? It looked like curtains. Don't you think so? The light turned green. I pressed the accelerator. My foot was shaking. I didn't answer her. I couldn't speak. My brain, my nurse brain, the one that assesses and diagnoses, kicked into high gear. One Connor pays for a $200 dinner in cash. He makes a weird, disjointed comment about freeing up the company card for a hotel stay. 3. He and Renee share an overly intimate hug. 4. He sends me away, using a hospital emergency as an excuse. 5. A notification for a romance package for Mr. Hale appears on her phone. For tonight, the pieces weren't just connecting. They were slamming together. The noise was deafening in my head. I dropped Renee at the entrance to her upscale condo building. She was all smiles again. Good night, Gemma. Get some rest. You look terribly stressed. I just nodded. I watched her walk through the automatic glass doors, her back straight, not a hint of faintness in her step. I pulled away from the curb, drove 1 block, and parked the car under a flickering streetlight. I sat there, in the silence, my hands gripping the steering wheel. I stared at the dashboard. I thought about all the liars I've met, the patients who swear they haven't been drinking when their liver is failing, the family members who insist their elderly father is fine, just forgetful when he has bruises on his arms. I see lies every single day. I'm trained to spot them. My job, my life, depends on looking past the story someone is telling and seeing the facts underneath. If a patient told me this story, I wouldn't believe them for a second. Why did I believe my husband? I pulled out my phone. My hands were steady now. The tremor was gone, replaced by a cold, sharp clarity. I opened the location-sharing app. We had turned it on years ago. For safety, Connor had said. In case you break down after a late shift. I tapped his icon. I watched the little blue dot that was my husband. It was not at the Blue Ridge Mercy Center. My hospital was 3 miles north. The dot was not at his office, which was 5 miles west. The blue dot was gliding smoothly down Riverfront Drive. It was moving directly toward the cluster of high-end hotels by the water. It stopped. The dot pulsed, a steady beacon. Right on top of the icon labeled Sterling Harbor Suites. I put the phone down. I took 1 deep, slow breath, the kind I take before inserting a central line. I did not cry. I did not scream. I did not hit the steering wheel. The night shift nurse took over. The rule is simple. Assess. Do not panic. Act. I pulled the car back into traffic. I did not turn toward home. I turned toward the river. I put 1 hand on the steering wheel, and with the other, I opened the voice recorder app on my phone and hit record. I was going to the Sterling Harbor Suites. I walked into the Sterling Harbor Suites, looking exactly like what I was, a woman who had just finished a grueling 12-hour shift. I was still in my navy blue scrubs, my hair pulled back in a tight, functional bun. My sneakers squeaked slightly on the polished marble. People in hotel lobbies are trained to ignore uniforms. We are the background noise of travel. The flight attendants, the delivery drivers, the weary nurses. I blended right in. The lobby was all soft. amber lighting and the faint, expensive scent of sandalwood and generic luxury. I bypassed the self-serve water station with its artful slices of lemon and cucumber floating in the glass container and went straight to the front desk. My phone was already in my hand, the voice recorder app open and running. I just needed confirmation. I needed the room number. A young woman with a perfectly pleasant, rehearsed smile looked up. "Welcome to Sterling. How can I help you?" I put on my tired but appreciative smile, the one I use on family members who are in the way. "Hi, I know this is a strange request. My husband, Connor Hale, checked in a little while ago. He's here with his mother." I made sure to emphasize the word mother, watching her face for any flicker of confusion, any micro-expression that said, "That's not right." There was nothing. She just typed the name into the system. "Hale? Yes, I see him." She looked up, her corporate smile unchanged. "Of course, that's Mr. and Mrs. Hale in room 1908, on the 19th floor. It's one of our suites." She paused, her finger hovering over the phone. "Would you like me to call up and let them know you're here?" Mr. and Mrs. Hale. The words didn't just sting, they were needles. A thick gauge, 18-gauge needle, straight into my chest. No anesthetic. "Mr. and Mrs. Hale. Room 1908. I needed a second. My throat closed. I turned away abruptly and went to that water station I'd ignored. My hand was shaking as I poured a small paper cup of the lemon water. I drank it too fast. The ice water hit the back of my throat and I choked, a sharp, silent cough that bent me over for a second. I composed myself. Triage. I turned back to the clerk, wiping my mouth, forcing the smile back onto my face. "Oh, goodness. Thank you. But no, please don't call up." I tried to laugh. It sounded like a bark. "He's probably helping her get settled. She wasn't feeling well earlier. You know, I'll just wait for him down here. I'll grab a seat at the bar. If he comes down, I'll catch him." "Of course, ma'am," she said, her attention already drifting to the next guest. I retreated. My brain was humming. Room 1908. Mr. and Mrs. Hale. I didn't go to the bar. The bar was open, exposed, too bright. I scanned the lounge. It was one of those spaces designed for discreet, important conversations, sectioned off by tall, dark wood partitions and uncomfortable-looking modern art. I found the perfect spot, a small table for two, tucked into an alcove. It was shielded by one of the partitions, but it gave me a clean, unobstructed view of the main elevator bank. Anyone coming or going from the 19th floor would have to pass right by me. I sat down, facing the elevators. I took my phone out. The recording app was still running, the timer silently ticking up. I zipped open the main compartment of my canvas work bag, the one I carried my stethoscope, my lunch, my water bottle, and my life in. I propped the phone inside the bag, angled toward the walkway, the microphone clear of any obstruction. I zipped the bag halfway, leaving a gap. It just looked like a tired nurse's tote bag, dumped unceremoniously on the table. I waited. In my line of work, you learn to wait. You wait for lab results. You wait for doctors to call back. You wait for a patient's fever to break, or for their heart to finally stop fighting. I waited. It wasn't 5 minutes. The elevator chimed, a soft, pleasant tone. The doors slid open, and they stepped out. My breath caught. This was not the image of a devoted son helping his faint mother. Connor had his arm draped low around her shoulders, his hand resting familiarly on her upper arm. Renee was wearing a silk blouse I'd never seen, and she was smiling, her face animated and bright, not a trace of illness on it. As they walked past my alcove, she reached up and, with a wifely, intimate gesture, straightened the collar of his jacket. He leaned his head down, and she brushed her lips against his chin. They didn't see me. They were in their own bubble. They chose a table near the center of the lounge, just on the other side of my partition. I couldn't see them directly, but they were close, maybe 15 feet away, close enough. A waitress approached them. I heard Renee's laugh, light and tinkling. "We'll have the champagne," she said, her voice smooth. "The one that comes with the package. The romance package champagne." I sat perfectly still. My blood felt like it had been replaced with ice water. The audio recorder app on my phone screen was showing active, jumping sound waves. I focused on their voices, filtering out the clink of glasses and the soft, generic jazz playing overhead. "Well," Connor said. His voice was low, relaxed. "That was a close one tonight. I thought Gemma was getting suspicious at the restaurant. All that cash." "Please," Renee's voice dripped with contempt. This was not the voice of the frail, gentle woman I knew. This voice was hard, sharp, and laced with amusement. That girl is too trusting to see what's right in front of her. She believes every ridiculous story you spin. An emergency at the hospital. So creative. "It works," Connor said. "It just needs to work for a few more weeks. My lawyer says the paperwork is filed. Once the judge accepts the guardianship petition, everything is ours. The house, her savings, the insurance policies, everything she has in her name, everything her mother left her, will be under my control, our control." My stomach twisted into a cold, hard knot. Guardianship. "You're sure this doctor will sign off?" Renee asked. "He already did," Connor said, and I could hear the smirk in his voice. "Dr. Albright, he owed me a favor from that little insider trading tip last year. The report is already drafted. It paints a perfect picture. Sudden onset depression, paranoid delusions, inability to manage her own financial affairs. He even added a note about her hoarding tendencies. Based on that cluttered supply closet I showed him, it's perfect. The court will see a loving husband desperately trying to save his unstable wife. They'll hand her over to me without a second thought." I felt the bile rise in my throat. "My supply closet. The one where I kept my old nursing textbooks and my mother's photo albums." Renee laughed. "It's almost too easy. She's so simple. She really believes in the good of people. She's not like that awful girl in Phoenix." There was a pop sound, the champagne being opened. "Don't even mention Phoenix," Connor said, his voice tightening. "That was a mess. We almost got caught." "It was a mess because you got sloppy," Renee snapped. "But the principle was sound, and this one is easier. At least I don't have to pretend to be her mother. God, being your mother for the last 4 years has been exhausting. I can't wait to just be your wife again." I didn't hear any more. I couldn't. Not his mother, his wife. I stood up. My legs felt like they were filled with wet cement. I picked up my bag, my movements slow, deliberate, muffled. I didn't stop the recording. I didn't look at them. I just walked. I walked past the bar, past the front desk, past the smiling clerk, and through the automatic glass doors. I walked out into the cold night air. I didn't stop walking until I reached my car. Parked 2 blocks away, I got in. I locked the doors. I sat in the darkness, the streetlight casting sick yellow shadows. I finally looked at my phone. I pressed the stop button. The file was 7 minutes and 24 seconds long. My hand was shaking. It wasn't from fear. It wasn't from sadness. It was shaking with a cold. Pure, chemical rage. It wasn't a romance package. It was a conspiracy. They weren't just cheating. They were planning to have me legally declared insane so they could steal my house, my money, and my life. I sat there for a long time. The shock was wearing off, and the nurse was taking over again. Triage, assess the damage, stop the bleeding. This wasn't a marriage to be saved. This wasn't a husband to confront. This was a crime scene. This was a diagnosis. For the first time all night, I stopped thinking about how to save my marriage. I started thinking about how to perform a clinical, precise, legal autopsy on it, and I had just collected my first perfect specimen. I got home from the hotel just after 9 p.m. I parked the car, walked into the house, and went straight to the bedroom. I didn't sleep. I just lay there, a perfectly still, perfectly silent statue, until my alarm went off at 5:30 a.m. for my next shift. Connor wasn't home yet. He rolled in at 6:15, just as I was finishing my shower. He looked tired, theatrically rumpled, and he smelled faintly of sandalwood soap. "Morning," I said. my voice sounding disgustingly normal as I toe-dried my hair. "Hey," he sighed, kissing my cheek. It was a dry, absent-minded peck. God, what a night. That surgeon, he just kept finding new problems. I'm exhausted. "Poor thing," I said, handing him a mug of coffee, the coffee I'd just brewed. "You must have been so busy." "You have no idea," he mumbled, rubbing his eyes. "Just slammed, all night." I watched him drink the coffee, my expression carefully neutral. I was thinking about the champagne at Sterling Harbor. I was thinking about the words, guardianship petition. I was thinking about Mr. and Mrs. Hale. I just smiled, the same empty, accommodating smile I'd used at the steakhouse. "Well, try to get some sleep. I have to run." Blue Ridge Mercy Center is a special kind of purgatory on a Friday morning. The energy of the night shift, all adrenaline and stale coffee, collides with the fresh, administrative energy of the day shift. The coffee in the break room tasted, as it always did, like burnt water, like it had been strained through a dirty sock. I was on my second cup, charting on a patient who'd come in with a mysterious fall, when Nina Ortiz cornered me by the vitals machine. Nina is my work wife, my sister in scrubs. She's seen me cry over dead patients and laugh hysterically over leaked bedpans. She can read my vital signs from across the room. She took one look at me, folded her arms, and said, "Okay, spill. Spill what I'm charting." "Bullshit," she said, lowering her voice. "You've got your code blue face on, the one where you're not blinking. You don't look tired. You look dangerous. You look like you're about to burn a house down, and you're just picking out the match." I looked around. The break room was empty, save for a resident sleeping with his face on a textbook in the corner. I pulled her into the small, windowless supply closet, the other supply closet, the one at work, the one that smelled like antiseptic wipes and sterile gauze. "What I'm about to show you," I whispered. "Stay in this room. I mean it. Nina." "My lips are a HIPAA-compliant vault," she said, her eyes wide. "What is it?" I took out my phone. I didn't play the whole 7-minute file. I couldn't risk it. I just scrubbed to the crucial part. I played with her for 20 seconds. "I just need to work for a few more weeks. Once the judge accepts the guardianship petition, everything is ours. Paranoid delusions. Inability to manage her own financial affairs." I hit pause. Nina's eyes were huge. Her jaw was on the floor. She looked like I'd just shown her a positive test for a disease we'd all thought was extinct. "Holy shit," she breathed. "Gemma, who is that?" "Is that Connor? A guardianship?" "And his mother," I said, my voice flat. Nina grabbed my arm. "Gemma, that is not bad marriage territory. That is true crime podcast territory. That is call the cops territory." "Not yet," I said. "Cops come later. First, I need a lawyer." During my 30-minute lunch break, I sat in my car in the hospital parking garage, the engine off, the air thick and cold. I dialed the number I knew by heart. My cousin, Morgan Blake. Morgan lived 500 miles away, practiced in a different state, and was the most ruthless divorce and asset forfeiture lawyer I'd ever met. She had always hated Connor. She always said he had salesman eyes. She picked up on the second ring. "Gemma Powell, this isn't a social call." "What's he done?" "Worse than you think," I said. I gave her a 30-second summary. The restaurant, the romance package, the hotel lobby recording, the guardianship petition, the Phoenix victim, Mr. and Mrs. Hale. There was a long, cold silence on the other end of the line. Morgan wasn't the type to offer sympathies. She was the type to calculate damages. "Okay," she finally said, her voice all business. "First question, what state are you in?" I told her. "Good," she said. "One-party consent. Your recording is gold. It's admissible. It proves intent. You are not a wife right now. Gemma, you are a material witness to a conspiracy to commit fraud. Do you understand me?" "Yes." "This is what you do. You do not confront him. You do not confront her. You do not let them know you are anything other than the sweet, simple, trusting little nurse they think you are. You smile. You make him coffee. You act worried about his stress. You do not, under any circumstances, tip your hand. They are trying to build a case that you are unstable. Do not give them a single piece of evidence. Am I clear? Crystal. Hold that file like it's a winning lottery ticket. And tonight, you are not a nurse. You are an auditor. You are going to go through every financial document you two share, bank accounts, credit cards, retirement funds, the deed to your house, everything. I want a full audit by morning. Send me what you find. I'm clearing my schedule. My shift ended at 7 p.m. I drove home, the adrenaline from the day fading into a deep, bone-weary exhaustion. But I wasn't tired. I was focused. Connor was in the living room, watching a basketball game. He'd had a long day and just needed to veg out. "I'm exhausted, babe," I said, putting the performance of a lifetime on. "I'm just going to take a long bath and go to bed early. Might take one of my sleepers." "Good idea," he said, eyes glued to the screen. "You've been on edge." Perfect. I was on edge. I was playing right into his script. I took a bath. I locked the bedroom door. I waited. At 11:30 p.m., I crept out. The house was silent. He was asleep, snoring lightly, the picture of innocent exhaustion. I went to the home office. I sat in his expensive leather chair and I opened our joint bank account on the laptop. I always let him handle the finances. He was the wealth manager, after all. I just checked the balance, saw that my paycheck was deposited, and moved on. I never looked at the details. Tonight, I looked. It started with the withdrawals. Small, then large, then I saw the recurring payments. $5,000 every month for the last 2 years, sent via wire transfer to something called the Renee Hale Living Trust. My blood ran cold. A living trust. For his mother, who supposedly lived on a widow's pension. Then I clicked on the Documents tab. I opened the folder for our mortgage. Our house, the one my mother's inheritance had provided the down payment for. There was the original mortgage, and then there was a second one, a home equity line of credit, taken out 6 months ago for $100,000. My stomach dropped. I never signed that. I had never seen that document in my life. I looked closer at the digital signature page. There was my name, a clumsy, scanned-in version of my signature, one they must have lifted from our closing documents. I kept digging. I went into his cloud storage, the family drive he'd set up. I found a folder labeled Personal Medical. I thought it would be his. It was mine. And inside, there was the file, the one he'd mentioned in the hotel. Petition G. Powell, Guardianship, PDF, Draft. I clicked it. There it was, page after page, drafted by a lawyer I'd never heard of. It described me, Gemma Powell. It described my erratic behavior, my recent bouts of hysteria, my paranoia about my husband's relationship with his mother. It mentioned my night shifts, disrupting my circadian rhythm and leading to psychological instability. It quoted things I'd said, twisted into weapons, the time I'd cried after a patient died, inappropriate emotional outbursts, the time I'd misplaced my keys, memory loss and cognitive decline. It was a masterpiece, a work of art, a meticulous, step-by-step plan to erase me. They were using my grief, my stress, my job against me. They were using the very things they'd caused to prove I was crazy. I didn't panic. I just started printing. I printed the bank statements. I printed the wire transfers to the Renee Hale Living Trust. I printed the forged signature on the $100,000 loan. I printed all 40 pages of the guardianship petition draft. The printer in the office whirred quietly, spitting out the evidence of my own execution. I made 2 copies of everything. They say in America, you should always diversify your portfolio. I was diversifying my evidence. I took 1 stack, put it in a waterproof envelope, and hid it in the bottom of my work bag. I would take that one to the hospital and lock it in my locker. The second stack, I put in another envelope. Tomorrow, I would give that one to my neighbor, Mrs. Petrov. The sweet old lady next door who watered my plants when I was away. She'd keep it. No questions asked. I shut down the laptop. I deleted the browser history. I turned off the light. I walked back into the bedroom. Connor was still asleep, one arm flung over his head, looking peaceful, harmless. The man who was systematically trying to steal my home, my inheritance, and my legal autonomy. I slid into bed. I lay on my side, my back to him, my eyes wide open in the dark. The marriage was over. That was Thursday night. Now, it was something else. It was a long con, and I was the mark. I listened to him breathe, his chest rising and falling. From now on, every word I spoke to him would be a performance. Every smile, every touch, every "I love you too" would be a lie. It would be my last, greatest role, the performance of the unstable wife, right before the curtain call, and I would bring this whole goddamn theater down on their heads. That night, I had another shift. It was a long, brutal 12 hours in the ER, a 5-car pileup, a domestic violence case, a kid with bacterial meningitis. The whole time, I was running on autopilot. My hands were steady. My voice was calm. I charted with precision, but in the back of my head, I wasn't in the ER. I was in a hotel lounge, listening to my life implode. I emailed Morgan the scanned copies of the bank statements, the forged loan document, the guardianship draft, and the 7-minute audio file from my encrypted hospital email account. I labeled the subject line, Family Health Query. The next evening, Saturday, just 48 hours after the steakhouse dinner, my phone buzzed. A secure video call link from Morgan. Connor was downstairs, supposedly catching up on paperwork from his busy week. I was in the guest room, which had a better lock. Morgan's face appeared on my laptop screen. She was in her sleek, minimalist office, and she was not smiling. She looked like she hadn't slept, and she was drinking what looked like straight espresso. "Gemma," she said, no preamble. "I got the package. I spent all night running searches. I also pulled in a private investigator I use, a guy named Sal. He's fast." And my voice was dry. "And," she said, "this is bigger than you think. Let's start with the basics. Who is Renee Hale?" "His mother," I said, the word tasting like ash. "His widowed mother." "Wrong." Morgan held up a piece of paper to the camera. It was a digital copy, a birth certificate. "This is Connor's birth certificate from Maricopa County, Arizona. Mother's name Catherine Hale, maiden name Ryan, father Daniel Hale, Catherine Hale, per Sal's search, died of an overdose 9 years ago. There is no one named Renee in his immediate family, not an aunt, not a godmother, no one. I just stared. A different mother, a dead mother. So who is she, Renee? Where did he even find her?" Morgan's face was grim. She held up a second document. My stomach lurched. I recognized the layout. It was a marriage certificate. "This," Morgan said, her voice sharp as a scalpel, "is a certificate of marriage from Clark County, Nevada, Las Vegas, dated 11 years ago. The parties listed are Connor Daniel Hale and Renee Ann Toussaint." I couldn't process the words. Renee Toussaint. But 11 years ago, I hadn't even met him yet. "Exactly," Morgan said. "You met him, 4 years ago? He told you his mother had just moved in with him after his father died." "Yes," I whispered. "He said she was grieving, that she needed him." "He and Renee Ann Toussaint, now Hale, got married 11 years ago. And here's the kicker. Gem, Sal ran a divorce search in all 50 states. There is no record of a divorce, ever. Not in Nevada, not in Arizona, not here. As far as the law is concerned, they are still legally married." The air left my lungs. It wasn't a gasp. It was a complete evacuation. I sat there, stunned, empty. It clicked. The hotel notification, Mr. and Mrs. Hale, the anniversary romance package. It wasn't a mistake. It was their actual anniversary. I started to laugh. It was a horrible, dry, cracking sound. "Gemma, you with me?" "Oh, I'm with you," I said, rubbing my temples. "I'm way ahead of you, so I'm not just the wife of a cheater. I'm the second wife, the illegal wife, and my mother-in-law is actually just my husband's first wife. She's his legal wife, Gemma, Morgan corrected, her voice cold, which makes your marriage void. You're the other woman, in a legal sense. You're the wife, in a bigamous relationship. The pieces just fell into place. The whole story, the grieving widow and her devoted son. It was a lie. It was a long con. They moved here from Arizona, Morgan said, reading from her notes. Right after that Phoenix Girl incident you heard on the tape, they must have gotten spooked. They came here, new state, new story. The mother-son dynamic is brilliant, in a sociopathic way. Who questions it? It gets immediate sympathy. It lets Renee be in the house, in his life, monitoring you, without arousing any suspicion. It's a classic affinity con. They built a narrative of family and trust to get access to your assets. My assets, my house, my inheritance from my mother. The guardianship petition, I said. It's not just about stealing, it's about silencing me. If I start to get suspicious, they just get me declared incompetent. Exactly, Morgan said. And your audio file is the smoking gun. I listened to it with a legal ear. Gem, they didn't just talk. They established intent. They named the doctor they bribed. They confirmed the forgery. They admitted to a prior victim in another state. This isn't a divorce. This is a multi-state criminal fraud and conspiracy case. I took a deep breath. The nurse was back. The shock was over. Okay, so what's the plan? We move, Morgan said. But we move silently. We're not just filing for divorce. We're going to the state attorney. We're going to the financial crimes unit. We're going to blow this up so big they can't possibly talk their way out of it. But I need you to keep playing the part. Just a little longer. They're getting ready to make their final move. We need to let them walk right into the trap. The call ended. I sat in the guest room for a long time. Wife, not my mother, wife. The next day, Sunday, I was making pancakes, playing the role. Connor came into the kitchen, a somber look on his face. He was holding a mug of coffee and a thick sheaf of papers. Hey, babe, he said, his voice soft and full of fake concern. Hey, I said, flipping a pancake. You okay? You look worried, he sighed, a deep, theatrical sound. I'm worried about Mom, Renee. Oh, why is she feeling faint again? I kept my voice light, just a hint of wifely concern. No, it's her memory, he said, shaking his head. She's been forgetting little things, names, dates. She's terrified. Gem. She's terrified of Alzheimer's. She's terrified of becoming a burden on us, on me. He was good. He was really, really good. His eyes were glistening. He was selling it. Oh, Connor, that's awful, I said, putting the spatula down. I know. And it got me thinking, he said, sliding the papers onto the granite countertop next to the pancake batter. About us, about the future. If something like that happened, or if something happened to you at the hospital, a needle stick, an accident. I looked at the papers. The top page was titled, Durable Power of Attorney. I was talking to my lawyer, he said. And he said we are criminally unprepared. These are just updates, standard stuff. This one gives me power of attorney, so I can handle your finances if you're, incapacitated. And this one is an updated healthcare proxy. It just lets me make medical decisions for you if you can't make them yourself. It's just to protect you. Gem, it's to protect us. It was the final piece. The guardianship petition was the stick. This was the carrot. He was trying to get me to just give him the power he was otherwise planning to take by force. He was getting impatient. I looked at the papers. I looked at his earnest, concerned face, the face of the man who had called me Paran Oid in a legal document, the man who had married his other wife 11 years ago. I forced a small, overwhelmed smile. Wow. Connor, that's a lot to think about. It looks so official, so complicated. It's not. Babe, I promise. It's just signing. I know, I said, turning back to the stove. But I'm just a little overwhelmed right now. Can I just read through it carefully? Maybe after my next shift. When will my head be clearer? He hesitated. I could feel his frustration. He wanted it signed. Now. Of course, he said, backing off, trying to sound supportive. Yeah, take your time. Just don't take too long. It's important. I won't, I promised. He left the kitchen. I watched him go. I pulled my phone out of my scrub pocket and sent a text to Morgan under the counter. He's accelerating. He just handed me a full power of attorney. He's using the Renee has Alzheimer's sympathy card. Morgan's reply came back almost instantly. Good. They're getting nervous. They're getting sloppy. This is perfect. I'm calling my contacts at the state attorney's office tomorrow morning. Just keep acting. We're almost there. We just need a stage. We need to set the stage. I looked out the kitchen window. Renee was in the backyard, pruning my rose bushes, the ones my mother had planted. She was wearing a lovely sundress, looking every bit the perfect, tasteful, all-American mother-in-law. She looked up, saw me, and gave me a sweet, gentle little wave. I waved back. They were excellent actors, but I had been in the audience. I had been backstage. I'd read the script, and I'd found the trapdoors. Their show had been running for 11 years. It was about to have a very dramatic closing night, and I was in charge of the lighting. Morgan's call came on Tuesday, during my weekend off. I was sitting at my kitchen table, pretending to read a nursing journal, while Connor was in the shower, singing. The vibration of the phone on the table was the only thing that felt real. I found her, Morgan said, her voice a low, urgent hum. The girl in Phoenix from the audio. Her name is Lila Hart. She's not in Phoenix anymore. She's here, in this city, about 20 miles from you. Why? She moved to get away from them. But Sal's report says she's been laying low, working a data entry job. She filed a fraud suit against Connor 2 years ago, right before he met you. It was dismissed. Lack of evidence. He countersued for harassment, and she dropped it. She's terrified. I'm sending you her address. She's expecting you. But she's a flight risk. Go now. I met Lila Hart at one of those painfully generic, brightly lit chain coffee shops inside a suburban strip mall. It was the kind of place where high school kids did homework and new mothers tried to escape their houses. It was aggressively normal, a sterile environment for discussing lives that had been systematically destroyed. I saw her as soon as I walked in. She was tucked into the most defensive-looking booth in the place, back against the wall, facing the door. She was small, pale, and looked like she hadn't had a full night's sleep in years. She was watching everyone who came in, her hands wrapped around a paper cup like it was a life preserver. I slid into the booth opposite her. Lila, I'm Gemma. Her eyes darted to my face, then away, then back. You're her, she whispered. The new one. Morgan said, Do you have proof? I have a recording, I said quietly. I have his bank statements. I have the papers for a loan he forged my name on. Lila let out a long, shuddering breath. It was the sound of a tension she'd been holding for years, finally snapping. A loan, she said, her voice hollow. That's how he starts. She told me her story. It was mine, but in a different font. She met Connor at a financial seminar. He was charming, brilliant, and he had this sweet, ailing mother who just adored him. Renee had been so kind to her, so warm. Lila had just inherited a small apartment from her aunt. He told me I was house poor, Lila said, staring into her cold coffee. He said I could leverage the equity, make a real investment. Renee would just happen to be there, talking about her medical bills, her fear of being a burden on her son. They were so good. It was like a play they'd rehearsed 1,000 times. She signed some papers. A simple refinancing, he'd called it. It wasn't. It was a high-interest, variable-rate loan from a predatory lender he was getting a kickback from. By the time she realized what had happened, he had drained the equity line, and the payments were suffocating her. I confronted him, she said, her voice shaking. He just smiled. He told me I must be mistaken. He told me I was confused. Renee backed him up. She cried. She told me I was breaking her heart, accusing her good, loyal son. They made me feel crazy and dirty. She almost lost the apartment. She had to sell it, pay off the loan, and move here with just enough money to start over. I sued, she said, looking at me with a spark of her old self. I tried, but he had every document, and he filed the countersuit. He said I was an obsessed ex-flame. He and Renee told the court I was harassing his poor, sick mother. The judge looked at me like I was scum. I had no proof. Just my word against their perfect, loving, mother-son act. The shame, God. The shame. It's what they count on. You're too embarrassed to tell anyone you were that stupid. I'm not embarrassed, I said, my voice hard. I'm angry. He has a sister, Lila said abruptly, as if just remembering. A half-sister, Tessa. From his father's first marriage, she found them out, years ago, before me, even. What do you mean? I found her when I was trying to build my case. She lives in Oregon. She told me Connor and Renee once tried to take out a massive life insurance policy on her, with her as the beneficiary, but Renee as the co-signer. Then, Connor started suggesting adventures, rock climbing, a trip to a cabin with a tricky furnace. Tessa wasn't stupid. She's a paramedic. She knows what accidents look like. She told me she called Renee a parasitic succubus and told Connor she'd have him arrested if he ever contacted her again. I left the coffee shop with Tessa's email address. That night, after my shift, I sat in the hospital locker room at 4 a.m. I wrote her an email. I kept it simple. My name is Gemma Powell. I am married to your half-brother, Connor. I am writing to you because I believe he and Renee are engaged in criminal fraud. I have audio evidence of them planning to have me declared incompetent to steal my assets. I know you tried to warn people about them. I'm asking for your help. I attached a 30-second audio clip, the part where Renee mentions the girl in Phoenix and complains about being his mother. The reply came 3 hours later. Just as I was handing off my patients to the day shift, it was blunt. They're not just parasites. They're monsters. I've been waiting for this call for 10 years. I thought he'd be in jail by now. What do you need? I have texts. I have old letters. I have a whole box of their crazy. I'm on your side. I sat on the locker room bench, the smell of antiseptic and stale scrubs filling my lungs, and for the first time, I felt a crack in the ice. I wasn't just a wife. I wasn't just a victim. I realized, with a sudden, chilling clarity, that I was just the next one. Lila was the one before me. Tessa was the one who got away. Connor and Renee were a virus, moving from host to host. But I was the first one who had the training, the resources, and the ice-cold rage to fight back. I was the first one who wasn't broken by shame. I met Lila one more time, a few days later, in a public park. She looked a little better, a little color in her cheeks. Tessa is in, I told her. She's sending a full, notarized affidavit to my lawyer, with copies of every text message. Lila reached into her bag. She pulled out a small, black USB flash drive. When I was packing up my apartment, she said, I found this. It was in a box of old tax papers he'd helped me organize. He must have forgotten it. I've been too afraid to even look at it. What is it? It's his old files, before me. I think it's his whole life. Emails, contracts. There are photos, pictures of him and Renee, on a beach, in a different city, with different hair, and they're kissing, like, kissing. She pressed the drive into my hand. Her hand was warm. He ruined my credit, Lila said, her voice shaking again. He ruined my name. He made me terrified of my own shadow for 3 years. I just wanted to disappear. I closed my hand around the drive. It was the last piece, the keystone. You won't have to disappear anymore, Lila, I said. I'm not just going to divorce him. I'm not just going to walk away. I am going to pull them out into the light, where everyone can see exactly what they are. I'm a nurse. I know how to handle a parasite. You cut it out, cleanly, and you make damn sure it can't ever grow back. I left her sitting on the park bench. As I walked to my car, I felt the small, hard rectangle of the USB drive in my pocket. For the first time, I didn't feel alone. I wasn't just one woman fighting her husband. I was the lead nurse in a trauma case, and I had just assembled my team. And for predators like Connor and Renee, an organized, educated, and allied group of victims is the most dangerous thing in the world. Morgan set up the meeting. It wasn't in her high-rise office. It was in a sterile, beige government building downtown, the kind of place that smells like old paper, weak coffee, and low-grade despair. Morgan was on the speakerphone, her voice tinny and sharp. Across the table sat Inspector Aria McConnell. Aria McConnell, head of the state's white-collar crime and elder exploitation unit. Didn't look like a cop. She looked like a profoundly tired and underpaid tax attorney. She was all sharp angles, from her cheekbones to the crease in her gray pantsuit. She had a stack of files in front of her, and my life was at the top. "Ms. Powell," she said, her voice flat. "Gemma, I've listened to the audio from the Sterling Harbor. I've read the affidavit from Lila Hart. I've reviewed the notarized testimony and text message logs from Ms. Tessa Hale. And my team just finished a preliminary forensic audit of the USB drive you recovered. This isn't a domestic dispute. This is a predatory, multi-state fraud operation." Morgan's voice crackled through the phone. "Told you it was a big one, Aria." "Big doesn't cover it," Aria said, tapping a pen on the file. "I've been tracking this type of scam for 5 years. We call it inheritance predation or authority fraud. They find a target usually isolated, recently inherited, or emotionally vulnerable, and they insert themselves into a position of absolute trust, a lover, a new friend, or in your case, a mother. They build a narrative, they isolate, then they liquidate." She looked at me, her eyes missing nothing. The problem. The victims are usually too broken, too embarrassed, or in most cases already legally declared incompetent by the time we hear about it. The evidence is always circumstantial. He said, she said, "You're the first one. You're the first victim who is still inside the operation, who has a clear head, and who brought us a 7-minute, 24-second audio file of them planning the crime. You're the first one who's still in a position to act." "So what do we do?" I asked. My voice sounded steady. My hands were folded on the table, just as I'd hold them during a critical patient update. "We move on 2 fronts," Aria said, her voice like a surgeon outlining a procedure. "Front 1 is civil, Morgan's territory. She'll have the divorce petition, a temporary restraining order granting you exclusive and sole use of the house, and an emergency motion to freeze every asset they have, the joint accounts, the Renee Hale Living Trust, the HELOC account, everything. We hit their money first. Morgan." "It's drafted." Morgan's voice cut in. "The process server is on standby. The second you give the word, Aria, he serves the papers." "Good," Aria continued. "Front 2 is mine. Criminal. Conspiracy to commit fraud, wire fraud, identity theft, forgery for that $100,000 loan. The list is long, but to make it stick, to make sure they don't just get a slap on the wrist and move to another state, I need to corroborate the intent you recorded. I need to catch them in the act." "How?" I asked. "They're careful. They only talk in whispers in the hallway." "We give them a stage," I said, the idea forming, cold and clear. "We make them feel so confident, so close to winning, that they get sloppy. Renee's birthday is next Sunday. I'll throw her a party, a big family brunch. I'll invite the entire Hale clan, Aunt Ruth, Cousin Joel, all the ones who love to sit in judgment." Aria's lips twitched in what might have been a smile. Witnesses from his side of the family. You're good, Ms. Powell." "It's a controlled environment," I said, falling back on my hospital training. "It's my house, my terms. It's perfect," Aria said. "It forces their hand. Here's how we play it. You are the dutiful, loving, stressed-out daughter-in-law. You throw this party, I will get a conditional search and seizure warrant, effective Sunday morning. I'll have a plainclothes team, 2 cars. 4 officers parked 2 blocks away. We'll have a live audio feed from the house. The second you play that evidence, or the second they bring up that guardianship petition, the second they confirm any part of this fraud, I will authorize the execution of that warrant. We move in, and we take them down in front of their entire family. Morgan, I said, can you be there? I'll be in the car with Arya, she said, holding the civil papers. That night, I became the most devoted wife and daughter-in-law in America. I created a group text, Hail Family Brunch Bunch. My invitation message was a work of art, sickeningly sweet. Dearest family, as you know, our wonderful Renee's birthday is coming up. To celebrate this amazing woman who means so much to all of us, I'm hosting a special thank you brunch at our house next Sunday at 11 a.m. Please RSVP. I really want to spoil her. The replies were almost instant. Aunt Ruth. How lovely. Gemma. We wouldn't miss it. I'll bring my Jell-O salad. Cousin Joel. How thoughtful. We will be there. Family is the most important thing. They were licking their chops. They were coming to judge my scones, to critique my childless home, and to watch the stressed wife try to hold it together. They were, in short, the perfect audience. The next few days were a blur of surgical preparation. I was no longer a nurse. I was a stage manager. I bought 2 high-sensitivity, Wi-Fi-enabled audio baby monitors and cached them in the dining room, one tucked into a large floral arrangement on the sideboard, the other behind a row of books on the shelf. I tested the connection to my phone until I was certain. I connected my laptop to the 70-inch flat-screen TV and tested the HDMI connection a dozen times. Then I built the presentation. It was my patient chart, my evidence. Slide 1. Happy birthday. Renee. Slide 2. The Sterling Harbor Suites. Email confirmation. Mr., Mrs. Hale. Anniversary romance package. Slide 3. The grainy, undeniable CCTV footage of them at the check-in desk, his arm around her waist. Slide 4. The 7-minute audio file, loaded and queued to the exact second once the judge accepts the guardianship petition. Slide 5. The $100,000 forged loan document, with a scanned image of my real driver's license signature right next to the clumsy forgery. Slide 6. The bonus feature, the scanned certified copy of the 11-year-old marriage certificate from Clark County, Nevada, Connor Daniel Hale, Renee Ann Toussaint. Slide 7. The victims, a photo of Lila Hart, and a screenshot of Tessa's text messages. They are monsters. I've been waiting for this call. My performance was, apparently, Oscar-worthy. I was a wreck. I was frazzled. Emotional. Manic. I snapped at Connor about the price of eggs. I forgot to pick up his dry cleaning. I was playing the part of the unstable wife to perfection. On Friday night, 2 days before the brunch, I was in our bedroom, pretending to be asleep. I heard them talking in the hallway, their voices low and conspiratorial. She's barely holding it together, Connor whispered. At this party, she's obsessed. She's manic. She had a complete meltdown over the grocery list. I heard Renee's low chuckle. It's perfect. She's cracking. Let her have her little party. Let the whole family see how unwell she is, how she's struggling. It's the perfect prelude. After the cake, after everyone has seen her fly off the handle, that's when we'll do it, you and I, with the family there for support. We'll sit her down, and we'll tell her she needs help, a rest. A nice long rest at that facility upstate. Dr. Albright can have her admitted by Monday for evaluation. I lay there in the dark, my heart not racing, but beating a slow, cold, heavy rhythm. Thump, thump, thump. They weren't just walking into my trap, they were setting it for themselves. I was in the kitchen on Saturday afternoon, baking cinnamon rolls. When Connor came in, he wrapped his arms around my waist from behind. Smells amazing, babe, he murmured into my neck. Thank you for doing all this. I know you've been tired. You're the best. I leaned back into him, forcing myself not to recoil. Of course, I said, my voice airy. It's for your mother. She deserves it. I looked at the calendar hanging on the pantry door. Tomorrow, Sunday. I had circled the date in red ink. I'd simply written G-Day. He probably thought it stood for guests. It didn't. It stood for Gemma. It stood for guardianship. It stood for goodbye. Saturday morning was G-Day minus 24 hours. My performance had to be flawless. I had to be the loving, devoted, and slightly unraveled daughter-in-law, desperate to please. Renee, I called out, my voice pitched with a bright, brittle energy. It's your birthday weekend. I absolutely forbid you from doing anything. In fact, I made an appointment. My treat. She looked up from the sofa. Where she was, of course. Resting. An appointment, dear. Hair, I said, clapping my hands. Nails, the full pampering package at Polished. We can't have the guest of honor looking anything less than perfect for her party tomorrow. Her eyes, those sharp, calculating eyes, softened with smug satisfaction. This was exactly what she expected. The simple, foolish wife. Still trying to buy her affection. Still trying to win her approval. Why, Gemma, she said, her voice like warm, slow-dripping honey. That is the sweetest, most thoughtful thing. I'd love that. We were in my car, heading to the salon. The car was filled with her suffocating gardenia perfume, a scent I now associated with forgery and fraud. I had, of course, made a small upgrade for the trip. A new dashcam was clipped to my rearview mirror. It wasn't just pointing forward. This one had a cabin view lens, voice-activated, recording a crystal-clear, wide-angle shot of both of us. It was already running. She waited until we were on the freeway, a place where I was a captive audience, trapped at 65 miles per hour. Gemma, dear, she began, her tone shifting to one of deep, practiced concern. I'm so glad we have this quiet moment. I've been well. I've been worried about you. Worried about me? I asked, affecting the perfect note of brittle confusion. Why, I'm just busy with the party. That's just it, she said, shaking her head sadly, a gesture of profound pity. You look exhausted, truly, down to the bone. You're stretched so thin. These night shifts, they're not natural. They're taking a toll on your mind. I'm fine, Renee, I said, gripping the wheel. Just tired. Are you? She pressed, her voice as soft as silk, as sharp as glass. You seem forgetful, a little agitated. It's perfectly understandable, dear. You have so much on your plate. Perhaps you should let Connor help you more, with the real things, the important decisions, the finances, the house. It's just too much for one person, especially when they're struggling. Struggling, agitated, forgetful. She was feeding me the keywords from their petition. She was building the case, reinforcing the diagnosis, right here in my car. I let a small tremor enter my voice. I let my shoulders slump. I don't know, I whispered. Connor showed me some papers. Power of something. It looked so complicated. I didn't understand any of it. Oh, but that's just it, she said, turning to me, her eyes bright and reassuring, a predator comforting its prey. That's just him helping. It's to protect you. Sometimes, dear. Sometimes the people who are sick are the very last ones to realize they need help. They can't see it themselves. This was it, the opening. I took the bait. Like that thing you were worried about, I asked, my voice small. Alzheimer's. Exactly, she said, nodding sympathetically. I just worry, I said, my voice trembling slightly. I read an article about what it is called, a guardianship. It sounded so scary, like they come in and they take away everything. Renee's face changed. The mask of concern didn't just slip. She threw it off. It was replaced by a look of serene, smug authority. The camera, clipped to the mirror, was capturing every micro-expression. Oh, Gemma, no, she said, patting my hand. Her touch felt like a spider. You shouldn't read those articles. They're just meant to scare people. The law is actually very humane. It's designed to protect people, to protect families. When someone simply can't cope, the system just steps in to make sure their assets, their life, is managed by someone who loves them. It's a kindness, really. She leaned back, her confidence radiating. I've actually looked into it quite a bit. For my own peace of mind. The paperwork is it's just making sure the right person is in charge. She smiled, a tight, satisfied smile, and looked out the window. It's a comfort, she added, more to herself than to me. Knowing the law is there to protect the vulnerable. The dashcam's tiny blue light was steady. It captured her satisfied profile, bathed in sunlight. She had just confessed to the entire plot, her voice filled with pride. That night was the final act. Saturday, the house was quiet, filled with the smell of cinnamon rolls proofing for the morning and the electric hum of anticipation. I was wiping down the already gleaming kitchen counters, the perfect picture of the frazzled hostess. Connor came in, holding that same thick sheaf of papers from the other day, the durable power of attorney, the updated healthcare proxy. He placed the stack on the clean granite. Hey, he said, his voice low, supportive, the voice of a man about to put down a beloved, sick pet. I know you're busy, babe, but I really need you to look at these tonight, before the party. I looked at the stack. I looked at him. His face was a mask of loving concern. He was so close. He could taste it. I pressed the heels of my hands into my eyes. Connor, my brain is full, I said, manufacturing a sigh that bordered on a sob. It's full of recipes and seating charts. I can't even think straight. I feel like I'm just going to break. His eyes lit up. I saw it. It wasn't sympathy. It was a victory. She's cracking. I know, he said, rubbing my shoulders. His touch was repulsive. That's why this is so important, to protect you. I pulled away, just enough, and turned to him. I looked him right in the eye. I promise, I said, my voice watery. Tomorrow, after the brunch, after everyone is gone, and I can finally just breathe, I'll sit down, and we'll go through it. I'll sign whatever you need. I just need my mind to be clear. I need my mind to be clear. It was the perfect phrase. It was exactly what he wanted to hear. It was the perfect, quotable admission for their little intervention. She admitted it herself. Aunt Ruth, she said her mind wasn't clear. He visibly relaxed. The tension left his shoulders. He'd won. Okay, he said, smiling, kissing my forehead. Okay, babe. Tomorrow, after the party. That's a deal. Get some rest. You've got a big day. You too, I said. This was the last night I would ever sleep in this bed. Last night I would never be in this room with this thing. He was asleep by 10 p.m. He needed to be rested for the big day tomorrow, for the ambush, for the final act of my legal and financial execution. I lay next to him, listening to the sound of his breathing, the even, rhythmic sound of his snoring. I wasn't sad. I had no tears left. I had already mourned the man I thought he was. That person was dead. If he had ever existed at all, I was just cold. I lay there, eyes wide open in the dark, and I wasn't imagining our life together. I was imagining the sound of metal clicking, the sound of a heavy steel door slamming shut. I was imagining the sound of handcuffs closing around his wrists, and hers, at 2 a.m., when his sleep was at its deepest. I slipped out of bed. I moved silently. All my training, all those years of navigating dark hospital rooms, checking IV drips and Foley bags without waking a patient, it all came back to me. I was already packed. I had been for a week. One small duffel bag had been taken to my locker at the hospital, piece by piece, my passport, my nursing degree, my birth certificate. Copies of all the evidence. The second bag was in the back of my closet, hidden under a pile of old scrubs, my go bag. I pulled it out. Inside was my mother's jewelry, the few photos of her that Connor hadn't digitized and lost, my laptop, and 2 encrypted hard drives, which contained a complete mirror of Lila's USB, the new dashcam footage, all the audio files, and every single financial document. I slipped out the side door, into the cold night air. I went to my car. I popped the trunk. I lifted the mat and placed the bag in the empty well next to the spare tire. A contingency plan. If anything went wrong tomorrow, if they somehow turned the tables, if Arya's team was compromised, I wasn't going to an evaluation facility. I was just going to drive, but I wasn't planning on driving. I came back inside, locking the door behind me. The house was silent. It felt like a stage, dark and waiting. My phone, plugged in on the kitchen counter, lit up with an encrypted message. It wasn't a text. It was from the secure app Arya had made me install. The sender ID was just A.M. The message was simple. Team is briefed. 2 vehicles, 4 officers, plain clothes. We are going for 1100 hours. We move on your play signal. Just hit the play button. Gemma will handle the rest. I looked at the message. My play signal. I typed back one word. Ready? I stood alone in my perfect, staged dining room. The table was set for 12. Good china, the polished silver, the linen napkins. The large, innocent floral arrangement with the hidden microphone was in the center. I looked at the blank, 70-inch television screen on the wall. It was a black mirror. It reflected the empty, silent room, the empty, silent chairs. Tomorrow, that black mirror will become a window. It would show them all, in grainy, undeniable detail, exactly who they were. I would walk in as Gemma Powell, the stressed, unstable wife, but I would walk out as someone else entirely. I turned off the light. The stage was set. Sunday morning, 11 a.m. My house was a perfect, sickening advertisement for the American dream. The air was thick with the smell of baking cinnamon rolls and freshly brewed, expensive coffee. Sunlight streamed through the spotless bay windows, glinting off my mother's good silver and the crystal vase of lilies in the center of the table. The brunch spread was a masterpiece of domestic devotion, a baked egg strata, a platter of fresh fruit, smoked salmon, bagels, and 3 kinds of cream cheese. It was all perfect. It was all a lie. The audio feed from the baby monitors in the floral arrangement and the bookshelf was live, feeding directly to Arya's unmarked car, parked 2 blocks over. My laptop was connected to the TV. The presentation loaded. I was wearing a lovely cashmere sweater, the picture of a stable, suburban wife. They arrived right on time, a flock of crows descending on a picnic. Aunt Ruth came in first, her eyes already scanning for flaws, a Jell-O salad held in front of her like a shield. "Gemma, dear," she said, her voice a judgmental purr. "How ambitious, all this for just a little birthday." Cousin Joel followed, clapping Connor on the back, already talking about God and the stock market. "Family first, Connor, that's what I always say. Good to see you honoring your mother." The rest of the Hales trickled in. 2 distant uncles and their quiet wives, all bearing bottles of cheap sparkling wine and potted plants, their faces set in the pleasant, neutral masks people wear to family obligations. And then, the guests of honor. Connor, my husband, the devoted son, looking handsome in a crisp polo shirt, one arm guiding his frail mother, and Renee, she was beaming. She was wearing a new, cream-colored dress, her hair perfectly coiffed from our trip to the salon. She looked radiant. She was the queen, and this was her court. They all settled at the table. Renee, naturally, was given the seat at the head. Connor sat to her right, I to her left. They held court. Connor told a charming story about his busy week at work. Renee accepted the small, thoughtful gifts, a silk scarf from Aunt Ruth, a devotional book from Joel with tears in her eyes. "You're all too good to me," she sighed, placing a delicate hand on Connor's arm. "I don't know what I'd do. After losing Daniel, my Connor, he's been my rock, my absolute savior. His sacrifice, well, he's a good boy. They don't make them like him anymore. Cousin Joel nodded gravely. A man's duty, Renee. Honor thy father and thy mother. It's the foundation. They were laying it on so thick, I thought I might choke on the hypocrisy. I looked at Connor. He was watching me. He was watching me with that soft, concerned expression. He was waiting for me to crack. He and Renee exchanged a brief, knowing glance. It's time. But I was faster. Before they could launch their little intervention, I stood up. I picked up my glass of orange juice. The room fell silent. Thank you all. Thank you all so much for coming, I said, my voice bright, just the right amount of manic energy they were expecting. It means so much to me, and to Connor, that you're all here to celebrate Renee. I smiled, a big, wide, brilliant smile, right at her. Renee, on your special day, I wanted to do a little something, a small toast, to you, the most important woman in Connor's entire life. Renee's eyes glistened. She preened. This was her moment. All eyes were on her. I put together a little slideshow, I said. Just a few memory lane moments. I turned, my hand steady, and I clicked the button on the remote. The 70-inch screen behind me, the one they'd all been ignoring, flared to life. But it wasn't a picture of a baby Connor. It was slide 1, a high-resolution screenshot of an email. The header was clear. Sterling Harbor Suites your confirmation, and the body. Guest name Mr., Mrs. Connor Hale. Package anniversary romance package. 2 nights. Check-in. Thursday, October 10th. The air in the room didn't just get quiet. It shattered. I heard Aunt Ruth's sharp, confused intake of breath. Connor was on his feet in a second. He was laughing. A loud, false, panicky sound. Gemma. Oh, honey, what is this? You got the wrong email. He turned to the table, spreading his hands, the perfect picture of a man handling his confused wife. Oh, this is a classic system error. I told you she was feeling faint on Thursday. I had to get her a room to rest. She was so dizzy, they must have just ticked the wrong box. Anniversary package. Can you imagine, honey? That's just a booking mistake. Take this down. Your embarrassing mom. He was good. He was so good. The family was nodding. Ah, a system error. That makes sense. Poor Gemma. So flustered. A system error, I repeated. I didn't turn to him. I just stared at the screen. You're right, Connor. That's a plausible explanation. I clicked the remote again. But this, I said, is not... Slide 2. The video. The grainy, time-stamped, undeniable CCTV footage from the hotel lobby. The table watched, in stunned silence, as the man at their table, their devoted son, their nephew, their cousin walked to the front desk with his arm wrapped low around his mother's waist. They watched him lean in, his hand on her hip. They watched as the desk clerk, a young, smiling woman, handed them the keycards, and then the audio from the desk mic, which I'd amplified, filled the room. Happy anniversary, Mr. and Mrs. Hale. They watched Connor lean in. They watched him kiss Renee, not on the cheek, but on the temple, a lingering, intimate gesture of a husband. The sound of a silver fork hitting a china plate was like a bomb. It was Aunt Ruth. Her hand was at her throat. Her face was the color of her Jell-O salad. Cousin Joel's mouth was wide open. No sound was coming out. But, a distant uncle whispered, his voice cracking, Connor, that's your mother. The question just hung there, a toxic, radioactive cloud over the cinnamon rolls. Connor was no longer laughing. He was white. He was staring at the screen, his eyes wide with a pure, primal panic I'd only ever seen in patients who knew they were dying. Gemma, he hissed, his voice a low, vicious snarl. Turn it off, now. I didn't even look at him. You're right, I said to the uncle. It's a good question, but it gets more complicated. I clicked the remote again. Slide 3, the audio file. The waveform popped up on the screen, and then their own voices, clear as day, filled the dining room, clearer, even, than the recording from my car. Connor's voice. Just needs to work for a few more weeks. Once the judge accepts the guardianship petition, everything is ours. The house, her savings, the insurance policies. Renee's voice. She's too trusting to see what's right in front of her. The report is already drafted. Sudden onset depression, paranoid delusions, inability to manage her own financial affairs. Connor's voice. The court will see a loving husband desperately trying to save his unstable wife. They'll hand her over to me. Renee's voice. Easier than that awful girl in Phoenix. At least I don't have to pretend to be her mother. God, being your mother for the last 4 years has been exhausting. The silence that followed was a physical thing. It had weight. It was crushing the air out of the room. Aunt Ruth was openly weeping. Cousin Joel looked like he was going to be sick. Right into the salmon. He was staring at Connor, his face a mask of purple. Theological rage. Renee. She wasn't crying. She wasn't panicking. She was just staring at me. Her face was no longer pale. It was dark with hatred so pure, so concentrated. It was almost beautiful. She knew. The con was over. You, Connor was stammering, pointing at the screen. That's fake. It's edited. She's crazy. I told you, she's having a breakdown. She's paranoid. Am I? I asked. I turned, for the first time, and looked at the family. Am I paranoid? Or am I just prepared? I clicked the remote. The final click. Slide 4. A scanned document. Pristine, bearing the official, gold-embossed seal of Clark County, Nevada, a certificate of marriage, dated April 18th, 11 years ago. Party 1. Connor Daniel Hale. Party 2. Renee Ann Toussaint. I let the image sit there. I let them read the names. I let them do the math. I let them connect the dots between Renee Toussaint and the Renee Hale, sitting at the head of the table. I turned to the room. My voice was no longer bright, or manic, or stressed. It was the calm, flat, steady voice of a night shift nurse in the middle of a code. I don't know, I said, looking at Cousin Joel. What the Bible says about marrying your own mother. I'm not sure if it's legal in this state. I turned, and I looked at Connor, and at Renee. But this isn't his mother. I pointed the remote at the screen, at the name Renee Ann Toussaint. This is his ex-wife, or, to be more accurate, his current wife. The room didn't just go silent. It detonated. The silence that followed the word wife lasted maybe half a second, and then the chaos I had been waiting for erupted. It wasn't just shock. It was a full-on breakdown of social order. Aunt Ruth let out a sound I had only ever heard in the ER, a high-pitched, whistling shriek, and pressed a napkin to her mouth. Cousin Joel, his face the color of a plum, was on his feet. He wasn't looking at me. He was pointing a trembling finger at Connor. Is it true? He roared, his voice cracking. Is it, Connor? Answer her, you creature. Connor, however, had gone past panic. He was in full-on feral, cornered animal mode. It's a lie, he screamed, and his voice was a raw, ugly tear in the fabric of the brunch. She's faked it, all of it, the video, the audio, that piece of paper. She's sick. I told you I've been telling all of you. She's paranoid. She's unstable. She's having a complete psychotic breakdown. Gemma, you twisted. Sick. Renee wasn't screaming. She was on her feet, her chair scraping back, her eyes no longer filled with hate, but with cold, reptilian panic darting toward the front door. She was calculating her exit. Connor was advancing on me, his face a mask of rage. You did this, he shouted, his hand raised. I wasn't sure if he was going to grab the remote or strike me. I didn't flinch, and at that exact, perfect, high-decibel moment, as his hand was in the air and Aunt Ruth was hyperventilating, the doorbell rang, a clean, clear, polite ding-dong. It cut through the screaming like a surgeon's blade. Everyone froze. Connor, his hand still raised, Joel, his mouth open, mid-curse. Renee, her hand halfway to her purse. They all stared at the door. I, on the other hand, felt a wave of calm so profound it was almost bliss. I set the remote down on the table, next to the untouched salmon. I walked calmly past my screaming husband, past his hysterical, weeping family. I went to my front door. I opened it. Inspector Aria McConnell was standing on my porch, looking crisp and severe in her gray pantsuit. She was flanked by 4 people, 2 men and 2 women, who looked like profoundly bored accountants. They were not accountants. "Ms. Powell," Aria said, her voice impossibly neutral. "It seems loud in here. May we come in?" "Please do, Inspector," I said, stepping aside. "They're all here, just as we discussed." Aria and her team stepped into the foyer, moving as a single, quiet unit. They fanned out, taking positions by the exits. The screaming had stopped, replaced by a confused, terrified silence. Aria held up her badge. "My name is Inspector Aria McConnell, State Economic Crimes Unit. We have a warrant to search this premises. We also have a warrant for the temporary arrest of Connor Daniel Hale and Renee Ann Hale." "Arrest!" Connor shrieked, his voice hitting a new octave. "Arrest me. She's the one. She's insane. This is my house. You can't be here." Aria didn't even look at him. She addressed the room, her voice cutting cleanly through the smell of cinnamon. "My unit has been investigating a multi-state operation involving conspiracy to commit fraud, wire fraud, identity theft, and the falsification of medical records for the purpose of fraudulent guardianship. The evidence provided by Ms. Powell, including audio recordings, forged financial documents, and eyewitness testimony, has been corroborated by evidence from other victims in this state and Arizona. It is more than sufficient." 2 of the plainclothes officers moved toward Connor. 2 moved toward Renee. "This is ridiculous!" Renee shrieked, her mask of gentility completely gone, replaced by a raw gutter panic. "You have no right. We are respected." "Ma'am, please put your hands behind your back," one of the officers said, his voice bored. Another officer was already at the table, calmly collecting their phones, Connor's laptop, and Renee's purse from the floor. He dropped each item into a separate, clear plastic evidence bag and sealed it. A third officer, the one standing by the door, began to speak, his voice a flat monotone. "You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be held against you in a court of law. You have the right to an attorney." I watched them. The right to remain silent, the one right, the one simple privilege, that neither of them had ever been able to exercise in their entire parasitic lives. Connor wasn't listening to the Miranda warning. He was staring at the 70-inch television. It was still on. It was still glowing, displaying the certificate of marriage for all to see. He saw his life, his con, his entire narrative, exposed, with a roar. He lunged. He wasn't lunging at me. He was lunging at the TV, as if by smashing the screen, he could smash the truth. One of the officers grabbed him, spinning him around, and slammed him against the wall, hard. "Sir, I need you to calm down and put your hands behind your back. Now." While he was pinned, I stepped forward. I wasn't holding a remote. I was holding a slim 9x12 manila envelope. "Connor," I said. He twisted his head, his face pressed against my lovely eggshell white paint. His eyes were wild. I pushed the envelope against his chest, right where the officer was holding him. "You were so worried about me signing paperwork," I said. "Here, you can read these on the way downtown." He stared at the envelope. "That," a new voice said from the hallway, "is a petition for divorce, filed with the county court at 8:05 this morning on the grounds of bigamy, conspiracy, and fraud." Everyone turned. Morgan Blake, my cousin, my lawyer, stepped out of the guest room, where she had been waiting for the last 30 minutes. She was wearing a perfectly tailored navy blue suit. She looked like a shark that had just been led into a swimming pool. She pointed to the second document in the envelope, which Connor had now let fall to the floor. "And that," she continued, is a temporary emergency order signed by Judge Alvarez 90 minutes ago, granting my client, Gemma Powell, sole and exclusive use of this house and all its contents. It also freezes every known asset, joint and private, including the Renee Hale Living Trust, pending the results of this criminal investigation. Morgan nodded crisply to Arya. Inspector, thank you for your promptness. Counselor, Arya nodded back. Good to see you. The room was just a collection of broken statues. Aunt Ruth had been led to a chair by one of the officers. She was just staring. She looked at me, her face pale, her judgmental eyes now just wide and full of a strange, dawning, horrified respect. Gemma, she whispered, her voice trembling, was the marriage certificate all of it true? I looked at her. I looked at the wreckage of my brunch, the congealing eggs, the overturned mimosa glasses. If I was lying, Aunt Ruth, I said, and my voice was finally, completely, 100% my own. I would have just packed a bag and left in the middle of the night. I'm a nurse. I'm trained to deal with infections. I'm tired of quiet exits. I'm tired of being silent. The click of the handcuffs snapping shut was loud in the quiet room. They cuffed Renee first. She didn't fight. She just went cold. As the officer led her past me toward the door, she twisted, her face suddenly inches from mine. You think this is over, she hissed, her voice a low, venomous whisper. For me and me alone. You stupid little bitch. You think you've won. The system is built for people like us. We'll be out in a week, and you'll have nothing. And that statement has been recorded, ma'am, Inspector Arya said, stepping right up behind her, holding a small digital recorder. It will be added to the file under threatening a witness. Please, keep talking. You're doing my job for me. The look on Renee's face, that final, utter, soul-crushing defeat, as she realized her own malice had been weaponized, was better than any anniversary package I could have imagined. They were led out. Connor was in a silent, robotic shock. Renee was muttering curses. The family just dissolved. As soon as the police were gone, they fled. They didn't say goodbye. They didn't offer comfort. They just grabbed their purses and their coats and scrambled out of my house, ashamed, horrified, and silent. Aunt Ruth didn't even take her Jell-O salad. Morgan squeezed my arm. I'm heading to the precinct with Arya. I'll be there when they're booked. Call me tonight. Do not talk to anyone else. And do not, under any circumstances, feel bad. She left. The front door closed. The house was silent, dead silent. And then, as the last sound of the police sirens faded down the street, a new sound began. A new, white van had just pulled up to the curb. It was a different van. It didn't have any official markings. A man in a work shirt got out, carrying a large metal toolbox. He had been scheduled by Morgan for exactly 1 p.m., right on time. He walked up the pathway, past the spilled fruit salad, and rang the doorbell. The new doorbell, I opened it. Ms. Powell, he asked, not looking at the mess behind me. I'm Jim, from A1 Lock and Key. I'm here for the full house rekey change all the locks. Yes, Jim, I said, stepping aside. Thank you for coming. You can start right here. I stood alone in my dining room. It was a war zone. Half-eaten plates, cold, congealed eggs, spilled champagne, the cinnamon rolls, my prized recipe, sat on the counter, untouched. The 70-inch television was still glowing, frozen on the final slide, the marriage certificate, Connor Daniel Hale, Renee Ann Toussaint, and then, the sound of a high-powered drill started at the front door, a loud, piercing, metallic scree. It was the sound of the old deadbolt being bored out, the sound of the tumblers and pins that he had a key for being ripped away. It was the most beautiful, most satisfying sound I had ever heard in my entire life. I picked up the remote from the table. I aimed it at their names, glowing on the screen, and I hit the power button. The screen went black. I stood there, in the silence of my ruined brunch, listening to the drill. There was no 3 months later, There was no, and she lived happily ever after. It was just now. I was a woman, standing alone in the wreckage, listening to a stranger change the locks on my front door. I picked up my original glass of orange juice, the one I'd used for the toast. I walked to the front door, past the drill shavings, and stepped out onto the porch. I stepped out into the cold, bright, clean Sunday afternoon. I didn't know what was next. I didn't know if I would sell the house or burn it to the ground. I didn't know what the legal battle would look like, but I knew. As I took a deep, clean breath of air that didn't smell like gardenias, that I would never, ever be asked to drive my mother-in-law home again, just so my husband could check into a hotel with her. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I'm curious, where in the world are you listening from right now? Let me know in the comments so we can connect and share our thoughts. Please subscribe to Zoe Revenge Stories, like this video, and if you want to support the channel even more, hit that hype button so this story can be heard by others.